White lives matter. Now, if you've heard this statement before, you may be thinking to yourself, what does this statement mean? Well, it's the same as Black Lives Matter, right? Because Black Lives Matter and White Lives Matter. As a matter of fact, you know what? Let's take it a step further. All lives matter. Come on, guys. We're all human. And why do you even need to say Black Lives Matter? Obviously, your lives matter. You never have to deal with years of systematic oppression or systemic racism ingrained into the very nation's history and body and DNA. You've never had to deal with that. And white guys, we've got a bad rep, guys. We got a bad rep. Things are being horrible and tragic. Now, recently, an event happened that caused a man named Nigel to make a statement. I'm going to show you the event and talk about the event as of current because the event is very important. I found the event on TikTok right here where this man was talking about it. So we're going to go ahead and watch his video real fast. And this man is Fat Families 2.0. I'm going to go ahead and play his video and explain what's going on here.
Many of you will be digesting today what happened to this young man, 18 years of age, with his life ahead of him in Southampton. His life taken away and police arriving and believing what they're told, making assumptions. And so I'm asking you the question today, which Nigel Farage also mentioned on another platform. Is it actually time to say that white lives matter as well?
It is very sad that this young man lost his life, and I am sad for the loss of life in general. It is horribly tragic. He lost his life to somebody of non-white descent is what happened there. So people are saying white lives matter in protest to this entire thing. So we're going to continue this.
Because in my view, there was no doubt a prejudice against this young man who has now sadly lost his life.
True, there are prejudices against white people. I agree 100%. I 100% agree. But in using white lives matter as a thing is very interesting. But we'll talk about that in a second. But I do think the loss of his life is sad. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is this guy's statement right here. This man right here. His statement is a little bit insane. So let's hear what he has to say.
We need a change in culture. Enough of anti-white prejudice.
Gotta appreciate that. Already starting off enough of anti-white prejudice. I gotta respect that. You know, he doesn't want white people to be insanely hurt. He's a British man, so obviously he cares about white people. He doesn't want white people to be destroyed and annihilated. So no more anti-white prejudice. Let's keep it going.
A promotion of the idea that white lives matter just as much as black lives.
Obviously they do. As a matter of fact, all of human history has dictated that they matter a bit more than black lives. As a matter of fact, let's look at a clip right now.
If you could, would you paint a picture for us of what it was like on the plantation in your early days?
Everyone was happy. We never heard of all these things we hear about today. And then it's no disgrace to say they're like children. When we say that, it's because they are like happy children, some of them. Because they like to sit in the sun and rather than work hard. My father had everything thoroughbred, from the pigs, horses, the dogs, and the people had to be thoroughbred.
As far as the colored people were concerned, I feel that they were a good bit happier than they are now. They had less in the way of material things. I can remember back in their 20s, when I was a small boy, they were always singing at their work. They had a great sense of humor. And now today, they just don't seem to care much about that as they used to.
What do you think are the differences between the races?
I think there's a refusal to accept responsibility. I think there's a lack of motivation. They don't worry like the white man. If they have troubles, they go to sleep and wake up the next morning, and that trouble is over.
Is it possible that white people have something to do with the lack of ability for blacks to assimilate into this culture?
Absolutely. But customs die awful hard. It takes a long time. And everyone knew years ago that the Negro would have to be given equality. But in the South, it's been compared to straightening teeth. It takes a slow, steady pressure. You can't do it with a hammer. And white people's attitudes will change in time. I'm a lot more liberal than I was 5 years ago, and I know I'll be a lot more liberal 5 years from now, and I think almost everyone else is in that category.
What has tended to make you more liberal?
Well, realization that the Negro is a human being like anyone else.
Mr. Hasty, what did you think we were before you began to think of us as human beings?
Well, in a way, we thought of you almost as a very superior pet. Something, or rather someone, we had to take care of, because we had to do so much of their thinking for them. We had to do almost everything for them, except living their own lives. Anything outside, we had to do for them.
My understanding, at least my understanding of history, is that white lives have mattered and still do matter even a bit more than white lives. To be quite honest with you, black lives matter a bit less than white lives. So to a lot of white people is what I've learned throughout history. But that's just history. But I want to hear more what Nigel has to say. So I took a little bit of a detour. Let's look at what Nigel has to say.
An end to DEI and positive discrimination.
Okay, and into DEI. Now, this is interesting because I love when people say this, because I'm discovering that they don't know what DEI means. I'm discovering they don't know what DEI means. So, I'd like to go to Google and go right to Wikipedia right here, right? And check here. Google's still my default search thing. I'm going to change it to DuckDuckGo. A little bit of a shame there because my browser is kind of centered on that, so I have to go through a lot of stuff to do so. So, what is DEI? Let's just look at it for a second. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Are organizational frameworks that seek to promote the fair treatment and full participation of all groups, particularly groups who have historically been unrepresented, marginalized, and subject to discrimination based on identity and disability. Now, what discrimination could that possibly be? What is going on? Could it be that this African American man be having a specific water fountain? No, not that. Could it be that? No Arab to sit down here. We do not want Arab people consuming alcohol and accosting women. We respect your belief in Islam. Thank you. Interesting. Could it be that? Could it be this, which is racist? No interest to polls? Could it be that? Could it be this racist thing right here? Could it be this specific colored fountain? Could it be this? Could it be the history behind that? Could this be why DEI exists? This man expelled its Hindu population and forced to leave his country in Bhutan. It could be that in 1990. Could it be this in 2010? Could it be this? It's a demonstration against Islam in general. Could it be that? Could it be the thing against homophobia? Could it be that? Could it be that? I don't know. I'm not quite sure what DEI helps. But that's one thing. Let's keep going. Based on identity or disability, those three notions, diversity, equity, and inclusion, together represent three closely linked values which organizations seek to institutionalize through DEI frameworks. Interesting. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about this. I could be wrong. And I'm open to being wrong at the current moment, but diversity refers to the presence of variety within the organizational workforce and characteristics such as race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability, age, or politics, because people were hiring based upon race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability, age, and politics. People were saying, "Well, I only want to work around Republicans," or "I only want to work around white people," or I don't want to be around black people." And this has just been a thing for years. It's been a thing for years. It's been a whole thing for quite some time. All right? More specifically, equity usually also includes a focus on social disparities, allocating resources, decision-making authorities to groups that have historically been disadvantaged, and taking into consideration a person's unique circumstances, adjusting treatment accordingly so that the end result is equal. Because, for a large part of history, black people, people of minorities, Japanese people put in internment camps, Chinese people coming to this country, Arabic people have been put into certain groups where they can't be around other people. That's what's happened in American country. That's what's happened in a lot of places. Oh, that's Mexican Town. There's a place in Detroit called Mexican Town, by the way, where it's nothing but Mexican people, realistically. That's the whole thing. This was done to segregate the Mexican people. There's a place in New York called Chinatown. You know that? It's a fun place to go to, but it's there for a specific reason. That's what the ghettos are. The ghettos are basically Black Town. That is why DEI exists. because there were certain areas put in place in order to destroy people. But that's what it is. But you may not know this, but DEI actually helps veterans. Early DEI included preferential hiring and treatment of veterans of the U.S. Civil War, their widows, and orphans in 1865. That's early DEI efforts, because that counts as disability. They were shell-shocked, or what we commonly know now as PTSD. They were shell-shocked by this information. They were destroyed by the wars. In 1876, this was amended to give preference to veterans during a reduction in force. In 1921 and 1929, executive orders by Presidents Coolidge and Harding established 10-point preference for veterans towards exams and hiring criteria for federal employment. In 1944, the Veterans Preference Act codified the previous executive orders, clarified criteria, and included special hiring provisions for disabled veterans, because there were no special hiring provisions for disabled veterans. That's what was going on, because they didn't care about veterans in our country. Did you know that? Probably didn't. Probably think DEI just means black people, but DEI also includes disabled people and veterans. That's what it includes. That's the reality of it. That's what it is. There's affirmative actions going on within these things too. It's disgusting. It's nasty. 1980s, not too long ago, about 46 years ago, not too long. Diversity themed momentum in the mid 1980s, at a time when President Ronald Reagan discussed dismantling equality and affirmative action laws in the 1980s. Why would Reagan want to do that? Because Reagan famously said, "I care about white people in my white country." Think of that for a moment. Ronald Reagan, he cared about that deeply. Equality and affirmative action professionals employed by American firms, along with equality consultants, engaged in establishing the argument that a diverse workplace should be seen as a competitive advantage rather than just as a legal constraint. Their message was not to promote diversity because it is a legal mandate, but because it is good for business. From then on, researchers started to test a number of hypotheses on the business benefits of diversity and diversity management, known as a business case of diversity. Now, this is also important. I like to bring this up a lot of the time. You may not know about Tuskegee, Alabama. This is the Tuskegee syphilis study. Now, you may be curious what the Tuskegee syphilis study is. It may baffle you to discover this, so I'm going to help you out. This is why Black Lives Matter so much. The Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male. Interesting. That's so strange. Informally referred to as Tuskegee experiment or Tuskegee syphilis study, was a study conducted between 1932 and 1972 by the United States Public Health Service and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. The CDC did this. A group of nearly 400 African American men with syphilis, as well as control without. The purpose of the study was to observe the effects of the disease untreated to the point of death and autopsy. So what they were doing to the Negro, to the black man, was simply giving him syphilis to see how his body reacted to it, because they wanted to see how strong black people were. That's it. This was in Tuskegee, Alabama. Curious, isn't it? Although there have been effective treatments to reduce the severity of disease since the 1920s, the use of penicillin for the treatment of syphilis was widespread as of 1945. The men were not informed of the nature of the study, and proper treatment was withheld, and more than 100 died as a result. So they just gave a bunch of black men syphilis just to figure out what would happen. But no, let's go back to Nigel. I want to go back to Nigel to see what he has to say about no DEI, because he obviously has very strong feelings about no DEI. Let's see my goat right here. Let's see the goat. Back to him.
But a country that treats everybody equally and fairly before the law.
Oh, do we? I didn't know we treated everybody equally and fairly above the law. I had no clue about this. As a matter of fact, let's look back at Emmett Till, right? Obviously, Emmett Till has a strong and tough history about this. Emmett Till, my goat, the one and only. This was 1941 and 1945. Did they treat Emmett Till fairly? Now, if you don't know about Emmett Till, let me tell you what happened. This young 14-year-old boy apparently whistled at a girl, whistled at an older woman, and then a bunch of white men beat him up. Now, and then they battered and bruised his body indefinitely. They destroyed this man. It was disgusting. Now, probably wondering to yourself, what happened after that? Did they get justice for the little boy because everybody's treated fairly and equally in the law? Incorrect. As a matter of fact, an all-white jury found the men who attacked Emmett Till to be innocent. That's what it was. Disgusting. Disgusting nature. But you're right. We treat everybody equally, right? And this is in the UK. UK treats you guys. I know the UK doesn't treat everybody equally, so let's keep going.
This is serious. This is urgent. I fear for where our society would be in a few short years if we don't grip this and do it very, very quickly.
What will our society be in a few short years? I don't know. I have no clue. Maybe diverse. Maybe equality. Maybe a bunch of people that were oppressed for so many years are finally fighting back. I don't know. I have no clue. I don't know. I really don't know. I'd like to know. Let's keep it going.
I want to send my sincerest condolences, the country's sincerest condolences to Henry's family. I hope this is the last time a British police force operates in this way.
True. It was to be fair, and to the actual situation, it was a little bit strange. But what baffles me, right, is the subject of the White Lives Matter. Because I keep seeing videos about it all the time, and it very much confuses me.
Man, fight back! White 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 man, fight back!
I have looked at history for a large part of my life. As a matter of fact, what I went to college for initially was to be a history major. I really wanted to be a teacher and teach history, but then I realized I'd have to deal with teenagers, and that kind of pissed me off. I really didn't care to do that. But if you look at history, you will see a long and tethered pattern of just wild and disgusting, nasty racism from people who have never been the majority on this earth at any point in history. Let's look at a little bit of that racism.
How would you feel about Negroes moving in here to Cicero?
Well, I really don't know, but some Negroes are clean and some aren't. And if they move in on this block and they're clean, I would play with them.
What does your mom and dad say about it?
Well, they say, well, I really don't know. They don't say too much about it.
Are they enthusiastic or no?
No.
No.
My dad says if they do, well, we're just going to have to move maybe.
Is that your mother up there working?
Yes, it is.
Let's see if I can't talk to her for just a moment. Ma'am, I wonder if I could ask you to come on down the stairs just an instant and talk to me. There's been so much talk recently about Cicero and Negroes and property values. What's your view?
Well, I'm perfectly satisfied with the neighbors we have. We have old homes here. We take very good care of them.
I see that you do.
And when it would come right down to it, I don't think we would object to other neighbors if they would come up to our standards of living.
So do you think that the fact that a man is a Negro or a woman is a Negro, on the face of it, simply makes them an undesirable neighbor?
No, not really. I've known so many colored people that are so nice. But like I say, I think they have to learn to live the way we do and take care of things.
How do people learn to live that way?
By hard work. We have worked very, very hard for what we have. We've been here 30 years and we didn't get anything for nothing. We worked very hard for what we have and we're still working hard to maintain it.
How would you feel, truly, if a colored family were to move in over there with the washers hanging on the line?
Oh, I don't know. I really couldn't say. I'd probably get along very good with them. If they leave me alone, I leave them alone. I'd be afraid to go out at night.
Afraid to go out at night?
Kind of colored people living around here.
You mean you think they're violent people?
Well, some of them are. There are some that really would be like that, and there are some good ones, too.
Mm-hmm.
You really couldn't trust any of them.
There are many good coloreds, and I worked with some of them, and I liked them, and I like this person that I said works at the lounge over there. But there's the ones that are going to march I don't like, and I can't stand, I got no use for.
And when your church tells you human rights?
What the marchers want, they don't want rights. They say they want peaceful coexistence. How can they have peaceful coexistence when there's all this trouble?
Who makes the trouble?
They do, by marching.
If, let's say, 10 or 20 families moved into Cicero, which is a town of 70,000,
they'd get killed.
Why this resistance in a republic founded on the enduring concept of human rights, equal opportunity, equal justice under law? Lincoln technically freed the slaves, but the Civil War did not free Americans, North or South, from a haunted heritage, the image of the black man as an inferior person. Our history, our habits are drenched with this concept. We adjusted to it rather comfortably with a minimum of guilt until 1954 because the descendants of the lowly slave were quiet. But then the Negro himself, armed with Supreme Court decisions undergirding his rights to full, not half citizenship, began to shatter the confining mold. Suddenly he was not asking, but demanding his rights. This disturbed the white man deeply, threatened his traditional sense of values. Many recoiled in fear. Latent hatred surfaced. The ugly process hastened in spots by reckless judgments of some individual Negro leaders for such dubious demonstrations as stall-ins at the World's Fair. Now, the bountiful American land is threatened with a summer of smoke and violence. If the Civil Rights Bill passes, this threat will be damped down, not stamped out. Is the Negro in his social revolution trying to push too far, too fast? Hundreds of thousands of whites think so. Yet, as Harry Golden sagely reminds us, the Negro is a unique revolutionary. He is not trying to overthrow the government or its institutions. He embraces the Constitution and federal law. All he wants, he says, is in.
But we're not really going to change the way we are doing. They said, well, the courts will make you. Don't ever forget this. Courts cannot legislate moral. Courts cannot legislate how you're going to think about another person, how you're going to act.
In Jackson, Mississippi, a city of 100,000 whites, 50,000 Negroes, the mayor has prepared for this summer's activity by increasing the police forces, by passing new ordinances against demonstrations, and by purchasing a steel-plated vehicle, a riot control car known locally as Thompson's Tank, named for Mayor Allen Thompson.
We are prepared to take care of any law violations, keep down violence. But frankly, I have been in federal court ever since the so-called Freedom Riders came through this city 3 years ago, with a determination on the part of some to break up a wonderful city. All I ask is for people to see how we operate. We are very fortunate in this city in having a police force that is twice as large as the average city this size.
The Jackson Police Department operates with the best demonstration deterrent of any city in the country. In addition to Thompson's Tank, armor-plated and equipped with 9 machine gun positions, the arsenal includes cage trucks for transporting masses of arrested violators, searchlight trucks, each of which can light 3 city blocks in case of night riots, police dog teams trained to trail, search a building, or disperse a mob or crowd, mounted police for controlling parades and pedestrian traffic, and compounds and detention facilities to hold and house 10,000 prisoners. Along with these ironclad police facilities, there are new ironclad state laws outlawing picketing, economic boycotting, and demonstrating. Other laws to control the printing and distribution of certain types of information, and laws to dampen complaints to federal authorities. Mayor Thompson.
We've had racial harmony and peace. In fact, we still have, in spite of agitators and intimidators who want to come into a city like this. And I've said this many times, that Jackson is as close to heaven as you'll get on this earth.
Strife and tension came to Mississippi again on June 12, 1963. This is the funeral procession in Jackson for Medgar Evers, head of the NAACP, who was killed by a sniper's bullet. He had been active in the voter registration drive. This is Jackson today, calm but still tense, only weeks after the second trial of Byron DeLay Beckwith, accused slayer of Evers, was dismissed when an all-white jury failed to bring in a verdict.
We believe America will turn into an all-out race war. We've been saying that for years, and the more non-white it gets, that's the more riots there's going to be. And by the year 2025, the white race is going to be a minority in this country. And that means bigger riots and more blacks. It means more chaos. And we'll be ready to take our country back when it happens. A skinhead's a 24-hour soldier.
Yeah,
He wears his boots 24 hours a day. We're this new SS with the Fourth Reich.
Hitler was very successful with his Hitler Youth movement. Most of the National Socialists that he recruited into the brown shirts were young when they were recruited. And I do not apologize for working primarily with the young. Our skinhead ranks are filled, brimming over with people of a young age. When you have youth, you have restlessness. When you have youth, you have impatience. When you have youth, you tend to get somebody that wants to solve all the world's problems very quickly. I pray that these little ones will be kept from harm, and you would grant us victory and success on this march. May our people wake up from their sleep and see the error of their ways and stand up for the white race. We're going to show them that this is our state, and those nigger-loving race traitors can go move to San Francisco or somewhere else where they might feel more welcome among its large gay population. But here in Alabama, this is going to be a white man's land. I think that once we become such a factor in Alabama, that the blacks and the other races will probably exodus the state at the rate that the Jews did in '33 when they saw Adolf Hitler elected as Chancellor of the German people. You're a good man. Wish you luck, man. I really do. Welcome to the house. Okay? We want the broken toys. Send us your broken toys and we'll fix them for you. The kids that received a lot of material things in life, they had a car at 16, a stereo in their room, a TV in their room, but their father never gave them love. We have people that we recruited in our ranks that were abused by their parents. They run away because they could not stand living at home. They were living on the streets. They have no food, no shelter. We go to them and approach them and we say, look, we'll feed you. Come in here and we'll take care of you. You're white, you're of our people. You have a home now.
All right.
Hitler. Happy birthday, Hitler. All Hitler.
And that's merely a tiny tidbit of the overall and overarching racism that encompassed the entirety of the past. It's a small tidbit, a little smidgen of what was happening back in the day. Not even a full whole hog of everything. I've merely shown you a small little avenue into it. And that's what's recorded. They're willing to say that on camera. All the things I just showed you, they're willing to say all those things on camera. That's what it was. It's disgusting. It's nasty. Now, I have a deep belief inside of my soul, spirit, mind, body, and chest that every white person is a little bit racist. It's just a little bit. Not by virtue of their own decision. It's just by virtue of the land they live in. I just feel that way. That's just what it is. And that's not to say that you are racist. I just think it's a little bit of racism that comes in. And it's strange. Same thing I see when white men want to say the N-word so badly. Same thing we saw with Shut the Builder and how adamantly he just wanted to say the N-word over and over again. And it gets me into the actual thing of White Lives Matter. White Lives Matter has always felt like a strange slogan to me. It's odd. Is it not odd to hear White Lives Matter when they have mattered for quite some time? Because before Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter didn't even exist. It didn't even exist. I was confused by this because it was never a question, right? It was never a question. It was never a statement that needed to be made back in the day. Because black people always had a little bit of disdain for white people because, you know, guess what? Hey, you guys are treating us bad. And white people said, who cares about you guys? Doesn't really matter. Nobody was ever seriously arguing that white lives did not matter. Didn't happen. Not a real thing. The phrase exists as a response to another phrase. And that's a little strange to me. Isn't that odd? That a whole phrase exists because of another phrase? Isn't that odd? A whole protest is a protest to a protest. When your entire identity is built as a reaction to somebody else's pain, you have surrendered your stance point in this conversation. Imagine if I said, right? Imagine if I was a woman for a second, right? I was a woman. I'm sexy. I work at the strip club on Tuesdays. Come check me out. Let's say I'm a woman, right? And let's say, for the sake of argument, that I say, well, periods hurt. And then you say, well, if I get punched in the balls, it hurts. Okay. You get punched in the balls every month? Well, it hurts more than periods. That's cool. I'm just expressing my discontent with periods. My uterine lining is shedding. That's what's happening. It's painful. I bleed every month. I get cramps. It's very bad. Yeah, but guys go through pain too. We have to go to war. Okay. Why say that in response to me saying that? But before I brought up the period, you were never even bringing up the war stuff. Yeah, but since you're bringing up pain, I thought that's why I might as well bring it up. Yeah, but you're trying to detract from the pain, right? Black Lives Matter emerged from generations of history, segregation, slavery, redlining, which is currently going on right now, by the way, lynchings, which is currently going on right now, by the way, discrimination, which is currently going on right now, by the way. A long list of moments where society openly demonstrated that black lives are treated as worth less. That's why Black Lives Matter. Whether people agree with every activist, organization, or political position connected to that movement is a separate discussion. I need you to understand that. That is a completely separate discussion from the actual statement of Black Lives Matter. Because I love Black Lives Matter, the sentiment. The Black Lives Matter movement is filled with people filled with greed and clutching at money, same with pastors in church. And I don't vibe with that. I don't rock with it. Obviously, I don't. Well, Black Lives Matter, you think, because a lot of white people think that it needs to be a movement for it to be real or valid, which is strange, very strange to me. It's not true. Doesn't need to be a movement for it to be real or valid, right? It is simply a statement of that black people exist. That's it. That's it. A reaction has no context, right? The reaction behind it. The reaction behind what you're doing. A reaction just reacts. When you say white lives matter, that's not an identity. Reaction is waiting for someone else to speak so you can argue, because that's what's going on. And what makes this whole thing stranger, this just ruins me, is that many people who passionately defend white identity rarely stop to examine where the modern idea of whiteness comes from in the first place. So let's look at it for a second. Let's actually look at whiteness and where it came from. I'm going to read the history of whiteness for you so you can understand what I mean by the term white race or white people. It entered the major European languages in the later 17th century, originating with the racialization of slavery at that time in the context of the Atlantic slave trade and the enslavement of indigenous peoples in the Spanish empires. It has repeatedly been ascribed to strains of blood, ancestries, and physical traits, and was eventually made into a subject of pseudo-scientific research, which culminated in scientific racism, which was later widely reputed by the scientific community. According to historian Irene Silverblatt, race thinking made social categories into racial truths, because white race was a social category. Bruce David Blum, citing the work of Ruth Frankenfurter, states the history of modern racist domination has been bound up with the history of how Europeans people define themselves, and sometimes from other people, as members of a superior white race. That's where white race comes from. Alistair Bonin argues that white identity, as it is presently conceived, is an American project, reflecting American interpretations of race and history. This is important to me. This is very important because a lot of people don't read and understand what white race actually is entailing and what it means. That's what it means. And I may not be making much sense to you, but I want to understand it's a social category formed by colonialism, right? A three-part racial scheme and color terms was used in 17th century Latin America under Spanish rule. Irene Silverblatt traces race thinking in South America to the social categorizations of colonialism and state formation. White, black, brown are abridged, abstracted versions of colonizer, slave, and colonized. You get that? Do you understand what I mean? White, black, and brown are abridged, abstracted versions of colonizer, slave, and colonized. By the mid-17th century, the novel term Español, Spaniard, was being equated in written documents with blanco, or white. In Spain's American colonies, black, African, indigenous, Indios, Jewish, and Morisco ancestry formally excluded individuals from the purity of blood, requirements from holding any public office under the Royal Pragmatic of 1501. Similar restrictions applied in the military, some religious orders, colleges, and universities, leading to a nearly all-white priesthood and professional stratum. Blacks and Indios were subject to tribute obligations and forbidden to bear arms, and Black and Indio women were forbidden to wear jewels, silk, or precious metals in earlier colonial Mexico and Peru. This is important because you can evade any of these restrictions by passing as white. You just have to look white. That's it. This led to scientific racism, and it destroyed a lot of stuff there. And I could go into the history of this because I've studied and researched this for years. I've studied and researched this for years. This has been a very important thing to me. White people don't make up that much. In South Africa, they don't make up that much, but apartheid happened in that way. That's what it was. White people have never been a majority upon this earth. That's how it has always been. White people have just been the majority when it comes to taking over and ruling. That's it. They have only been the majority when it comes to subjugating and dominating other people. That is what I want to get on about how white people came to be. Historically, there was no giant unified white race marching through history together. There were Irish people, Scottish people, Welsh people, Norse people, Germans, Italians, Slavs, hundreds of cultures, tribes, kingdoms, myths, traditions, and identities that often viewed themselves as completely distinct people. Why do you think the Vikings attacked the Geats, who attacked the Irish, who attacked the Scots, who attacked the Germans? Why do you think that happens? The category of white slowly became a broad umbrella, absorbed all those histories into one single political and social identity. That is not natural. That absorption, that was a choice. The choice was made to create a hierarchy. That hierarchy is a defense. They're defending the identity of whiteness. And the irony is so painful, almost painful to even think about. Entire civilizations filled with stories about gods, heroes, warriors, poets, explorers, and kings were gradually compressed into a checkbox on a census form. Think of the history that you probably had back in your day. Think of your legacy. People say white people have no history. That's true. Norsemen have history. The Norse gave the world Odin and Thor. The Irish carried centuries of folklore and legends. The Scots built traditions and identities that survived invasion, war, and political upheaval. These histories deserve to be celebrated on their own merits. They do not need to be flattened into a generic label. The label erases the very uniqueness people claim to be protecting. There's no uniqueness in whitehood. As a matter of fact, I would say, even so bold to say, there's no uniqueness in being black. I say it's uniqueness in being African or Ethiopian or whatever tribe you were taken from your people is what I say. Because black is an identity created simply because we were taken over and enslaved. And brown people are colonized people. That's disgusting. And I hate that. I really do. That's why so many black people want to know where they came from specifically on Africa, or where they came from in the Congo, or whether they came from St. Lucia or Barbados. They want to know. It's disgusting. The protection that you have for this uniqueness is such a strange performance that you dance for. The performance is for an audience that does not know the difference between a Norse saga and a Scottish ballad. You have no idea what that is. It's strange. The old concepts of the American melting pot carried its own strange bargain. Immigrants arrived from every corner of Europe, encouraged to leave pieces of themselves behind, become part of something new. People always say America's a melting pot, right? They say, oh, it has black and brown and Asian. That's not what melting pot means. You know it. I'm sorry. That's not what melting pot means in America. The goal of a melting pot was unity. But the cost of that unity was a cultural memory. Your languages disappeared. Your traditions faded. No Wicca, no Norse, no nothing. Just Christianity have one thing. Family histories are footnotes. Oh, yes, well, my grandma speaks a different language because she's actually from... You don't even know how to speak the language. Over generations, many descendants became less Irish, less Scottish, less Polish, less Italian, and simply became white. Something valuable was gained through shared identity. Something valuable was often lost. What was traded in the name of efficiency was often essential in the first place, is what I like to say. Imagine this, if you will, for a moment, right? Let's say you can mass produce hamburgers. right? SpongeBob versus King Neptune. And he's very efficient at making hamburgers. But there's no essential love in that. SpongeBob made the best burger in terms of King Neptune. Think of that for a moment. You have traded what you are for King Neptune burgers. Why'd you do that? No one mourns this loss. Because if you mourn this, if you acknowledge it, you would require admitting that the trade-off was not equal. The equality was the promise. You've destroyed your inheritance completely. This is why conversations about identity become so messy today. Many people feel disconnected from their roots, yet still want a sense of belonging. They look for meaning inside a broad racial category because the deeper cultural connections were completely worn away. You know what the tragedy is about all this stuff? It sucks that some of the richest histories of Earth are sitting right there waiting to be rediscovered. An entire universe of stories behind those family trees far more interesting than reducing everything to a skin color. You have reduced this into laziness. And because we have become such a beautiful capitalist society that indulges in laziness, we let algorithms decide things. We don't decide things for ourselves. We love all of this. We love being empty people. We love doom scrolling because it's doom and gloom. We have doomed ourselves to this entire reality. You need to acknowledge that loss. You should never dismiss the experiences of other groups. History is not a competition. One group's suffering does not erase another group's struggles. The existence of Black Lives Matter does not mean white lives are worthless. The existence of conversations about racism does not mean every white person is personally responsible for every historical injustice. Reality is more complicated than slogans shouted across a protest line. It's much more complicated than Make America Great Again. What's your plan? To make America great again? Yeah, but how do you do that? We just gotta make America great again. A protest against a protest is a losing battle. You turn the entire discussion into a mirror match. Nobody is actually talking about underlying issues anymore. Instead of asking why a movement emerged, people become obsessed with creating a counter movement instead of discussing history, culture, poverty, policing, discrimination, or community problems. Everyone starts arguing over 3-word slogans. You have heat without lights. You have this noise without any understanding. You have nothing. You have nothing. Personally, I think there is something profoundly sad about people inheriting thousands of years of cultural history and reducing themselves into a modern racial label. A label that would have sounded bizarre to many of their ancestors. I believe the Norse deserve to be remembered. I think the Scots deserve to be remembered. I think the Irish deserve to be remembered. Their stories, myths, languages, and traditions deserve more attention than endless internet arguments over slogans. A culture built entirely as a reaction to another culture eventually runs out of things to say. What are you saying? What are you saying? What are you saying? Your slogan is not a story. The ancestors did not die so you could have a better argument on Twitter. They died so you could exist. Existence is not an argument. Existence is a continuation. Memory requires attention. Attention requires stillness. Stillness will never hit your algorithm. Remembering is the thing you do when you are not trying to win. Winning is not the point. The point is not losing yourself to a label that was invented last week. You are losing a battle against yourself. To white people that feel lost in this world, I pity you. Because you have been caught by propaganda when you feel as though you were immune to propaganda. I hope you have a lovely day or night wherever you're at. And I'm out. Peace. Bye.
I'm your nigga night, be my loyal. Happy to try what you need. Your world, I love to live in it. I love the ride when you